That is a staggering figure. Now, there'd still be people who would say, but there's 8 billion of us. It's too many. Isn't this a good thing? And, you can understand why some people would say that, the pressure on resources, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what's the answer to that? I mean, we know that population continues to build strongly in some parts of the world.
Yes.
Parts of Africa, the Middle East, I think.
Central
Probably
Asia.
India.
Central Asia. India's below replacement. Has been for 3 years or something. That's another issue. So to the immigrationists, the people who support the immigration, there won't be enough immigrants. You're eventually going to run out of immigrants. And by the way, as the immigrants go down, you'll see the skills levels go further and further down. I don't mean to be disparaging toward Africa. I really hope that their economy and education systems get better. But importing Polish people with university degrees 10 years ago into Britain is a fundamentally different economic prospect to importing people with no secondary level education from Africa. I hope it gets better in Africa. We all do. But that's the economic reality there. So we're going to come up against hard limits even with the immigration issue. But, broadly, this thing just isn't going to work. It's not going to make sense anymore. And I think at a relatively senior level, a lot of policymakers, some politicians, certainly the people at Treasury departments and so on, are looking at the numbers and they're just going, oh no, we've really dropped the ball here. Well, we need to, we should have been talking about this 25 years ago.
I couldn't agree with you more. And smart, educated people from our best universities ought not to have, if you like, swallowed the propaganda so readily.
No.
And become so dismissive of family and of children and of traditional values, for want of a better term. Because here's a great irony. The West is now in turmoil about very high immigration levels. And it turns out that the answer to high immigration levels is go and have more of your own children, in a way.
I mean, it's common sense in a way. It really shouldn't be. It shouldn't require an economist to point this out, in a sense. I think we kind of lost the run of ourselves a little bit. I think in all this kind of enthusiasm to overturn old values and all these things that have been happening since the 60s or whatever, we actually started to just completely lose the plot and not realize you have to reproduce yourself or you go broke and your society falls apart. Like if you'd gone back to somebody in the Middle Ages and said, what do you think would happen if you just stopped reproducing yourself? They'd go, well, I won't be able to have labor for my farm and the economy will collapse. So if a peasant in medieval England can figure it out, why haven't our civil servants been able to explain it to our politicians?
There's a blunt reality we all need to face, in my view, Philip, and that is that education levels are not necessarily acquainted with wisdom.
No. Well, that's in spades been shown.
Yeah. Let me then come to, some sensitivities here. We're all a bit wary of them. We've been conditioned to think that to talk about traditional families and their importance is to, you're discriminatory. That's really the argument. You're being cruel to people who don't believe and don't practice normal family values. I mean, again, let's be really frank here. We know from the research that children born outside of traditional family structures, and that's now about 50% in the country we're sitting in, will not do as well. We're perpetuating a massive injustice in many ways by not being honest about this, in that we're not looking at it through the lens of the best interest of the child. We're not looking through the lens of the best interest of our own future as societies. We're looking at it through the lens of what is convenient and easy now, and so often it produces suboptimal outcomes.
I think it's just cruel. I don't understand why we have to prioritize the needs of parents over the needs of children. That seems fundamentally backward to me. I mean, if you're out in public and an adult and a child fall over in front of you, I think your instinct is to help the child, right? They're a helpless little creature that can't really do much for themselves. By the time you're an adult, you're already making your own choices, and the choices you make will either lead to bad outcomes or good outcomes. But we all kind of recognize, at least if we're not complete determinists of some sort, that, you're making those choices. You ended up in the career path you did, you ended up there, you made those choices. When children experience some of the things you're talking about, family breakdowns, they don't get a choice in that. They don't get a choice in that at all. When they become 18, 19, 20, 21, some of them may be able to have the will and so on to kind of do better than the other. But like, look, the social science on this is clear. Being a hardcore determinist for an adult is sort of to be a socialist or something like that, and I don't agree with it. But to be fairly hardcore deterministic about a child, I think is reasonable. The child doesn't really have a choice in the matter. And I think this kind of false compassion thing is completely strange and backwards. Surely we should care about the people who are helpless and don't make their own decisions before we start considering the needs, feelings, and so on of the people who do make their own decisions and are adults and can bear it.